If you could believe it, I have been listening to Louis Jordan way before his introduction into the Fallout series and Fallout 4. It was in 2010 when I first heard his hefty song list in Mafia 2's Delta Radio with Ain't That Just Like a Woman, Caledonia, G.I. Jive, Ration Blues, That Chick's Too Young to Fry, Choo Choo Boogie, What's the Use of Getting Sober, Friendship, and Open the Door Richard, which is a record I personally own. Mafia 1 also features You Run Your Mouth and I'll Run My Business. It doesn't end there though. LA Noir's KTI Radio also plays Stone Cold Dead in the Market, and his hit Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens. Later on, Fallout 4 would finally include him in the series with Keep a Knockin', and more recently in Fallout 76 with, fittingly, Salt Pork, West Virginia.
Take you to a cafe and buy you a real fine meal. Hey, Jack, I gotta do some riding. Soon we gotta come.
Louis Jordan wasn't your typical old-time performer. He was flamboyant, hilarious, and really stuck out compared to similar artists. Yet he seems just as underrated as the other artists I've covered in this series so far. Even if his music isn't your fancy, it should be noted that he was a giant pioneer for music to come. Jordan was born July 8, 1908 in Brinkley, Arkansas, where his father, James Aaron Jordan, was a music teacher and band leader for the Brinkley Brass Band and for the Rabbitfoot Minstrels. His mother, Adele, died when Louis was young. Jordan studied music under his father, starting out on the clarinet. In his youth, he played in his father's bands instead of doing farm work when school closed. He also played the piano professionally early in his career, but alto saxophone became his main instrument. However, he became even better known as a songwriter, entertainer, and vocalist. Jordan briefly attended Arkansas Baptist College in Little Rock, where he majored in music. After a period with the Rabbitfoot Minstrels, in which one of his colleagues was Leon Pee Wee Whitaker, and with local bands including Bob Alexander's Harmony Kings, he went to Philadelphia, New York. In 1932, Jordan began performing with the Clarence Williams Band, and when he was in Philadelphia, he played clarinet in the Charlie Gaines Band. In late 1936, he was invited to join the influential Savvy Ballroom Orchestra, led by the drummer Chick Webb, based at New York's Savvy Ballroom. Webb's orchestra was renowned as one of the best big bands of its day and regularly beat all comers at the Savvy's legendary cutting contests. Jordan worked with Webb until 1938, and it proved a vital stepping stone in his career. Webb, who was physically disabled, was a fine musician but not a great showman. The ebullient Jordan often introduced songs as he began singing lead. He later recalled that many of the audience took him to be the band's leader, which undoubtedly boosted his confidence further. This was the same period when the young Ella Fitzgerald was coming to prominence as Webb's band lead female vocalist. She and Jordan often sang duets on stage, and they later reprised their partnership on several records, by which time they were both major stars. In 1938, Webb fired Jordan for trying to persuade Fitzgerald and others to join his new band. By this time, Webb was already seriously ill with tuberculosis of the spine. He died at the age of 34, after spinal surgery on June 16, 1939. Following his death, Fitzgerald took over the band. Jordan's first band, drawn mainly from members of the Jesse Stone Band, was originally a 9-piece group, but he soon scaled it down to a sextet after leading a residency at the Elks Rendezvous Club at 404 Lenox Avenue in Harlem. The original lineup of this sextet was Jordan, saxes and vocals, Courtney Williams, trumpet, Lem Johnson, tenor sax, Clarence Johnson, piano, Charlie Dayton, bass, and Walter Martin, drums, as Louis Jordan's Elks Rendezvous Band. His name was spelled Louis so people would know not to pronounce it Lewis. The new band's first recording date for Decca Records on December 20th, 1938, produced 3 sides on which they backed an obscure vocalist, Rodney Sturgis, and 2 novelty sides of their own, Honey and the Bee Bell and Barnacle Bill the Sailor. These recordings were credited to the Elks Rendezvous Band, and Jordan subsequently changed the name to the Timpani 5, since Martin often used timpani in performance, the word timpani also being used as an old-fashioned colloquial term meaning swollen, inflated, puffed up, related to timpani or kettle drums, but historically separate. The various lineups of the Timpani 5, which often featured 2 or 3 extra players, included Bill Jennings and Carl Hogan on guitar, the renowned pianist-arrangers Wild Bill Davis and Bill Doggett, Shadow Wilson and Chris Columbus on drums, and Dallas Bartley on bass. Jordan also played alto, tenor, and baritone saxophone, and sang the lead vocal on most songs.
Jack, you dead. You've been always kicking, but you stubbed your toes when you upped and kicks the bucket, just like old man Mose. When you get no kicks from loving, and you blow your top instead, it's a fact that you ain't living. Jack, you dead.
Their next recording date, in March 1939, produced 5 sides, including Keep a Knockin', originally recorded in the 1920s, and later famously covered by Little Richard, Sam Jones Done Snagged His Britches, and Doug the Jitterbug. Lem Johnson subsequently left the group and was replaced by Stafford Simon. Sessions in December 1939 and January 1940 produced 2 more early Jordan classics, You're My Meat and You Run Your Mouth and I'll Run My Business. Other musicians who passed through the band in 1940 and 1941 included tenorist Kenneth Holland, who recorded with Billie Holiday, and the trumpeter Freddie Webster from Earl Hines' band, who was part of the Nassas bebop scene in Milton's Playhouse and influenced Kenny Dorham and Miles Davis. In 1941, Jordan signed with the General Artists Corporation, and the agency appointed Burl Adams to be his agent. Adams secured an engagement at Chicago's Capitol Lounge supporting the Mills Brothers, and this proved to be an important breakthrough for Jordan and the band. The Capitol Lounge residency also provides a remarkable yardstick of the scale of Jordan's success. During this engagement, the group was paid the standard union scale of $70 per week, $35 per week for Jordan, and $35 split between the band. Just 7 years later, when Jordan played his record-breaking session at the Golden Gate Theater in San Francisco in 1948, he reportedly grossed over $70,000 in just 2 weeks. During this period, the bassist Henry Turner was fired and replaced by Dallas Bartley. It was followed by another important engagement, the Foxhead Tavern in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Working in the looser environment of Cedar Rapids, away from the main centers, the band was able to develop the novelty aspect of their performance. Jordan later identified his stint at the Foxhead Tavern as the turning point of his career. While there, he found several songs that became early hits, including If It's Love You Want Baby, Ration Blues, and Inflation Blues.
Baby, 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 what's wrong with Uncle Sam? He's cut out on my sugar, now he's messing with my ham. I got the ration blues, blue as I can be. Oh, me, I've got those ration blues. I gotta live on 40 ounces of any kind of meat. Those 40 little ounces gotta last me all the week. I gotta cut out on my jelly. It takes sugar to make it sweet. I'm gonna steal all your jelly, baby, and rob you of your meat. I got the ration blues, blue as I can be.
In April 1941, Decca launched the Sepia series, a 35-cent line that featured artists who were considered to have a crossover potential to sell in both black and white markets. Jordan's band transferred from Decca's Race label to Sepia series, alongside with the Delta Rhythm Boys, the Nat King Cole Trio, and Buddy Johnson, and the Jay McShann Band. By the time the group returned to New York in late 1941, the lineup had changed to Jordan, Bartley, Martin, and the trumpeter Eddie Rowan, and the pianist Arnold Thomas. Recording dates in November 1941 proved another early Jordan classic, Knock Me a Kiss, which had significant jukebox sales but did not make it to the charts. However, Roy Eldridge subsequently recorded a version, backed by the Gene Krupa Band, which became a hit by June 1942, almost a year after the Jordan recording came out. It was also covered by Jimmy Lunsford. These sessions also produced Jordan's first big-selling record, I'm Gonna Move to the Outskirts of Town, 1941, originally recorded by Casey Bill Weldon in 1936. It also did not make the charts. It too was covered by Lunsford in 1942, whose version reached number 12 on the pop chart. It was also covered by Big Bill Brunzi and Jimmy Rushing. Sessions in July 1942 proved 9 prime sides, allowing Decca to stockpile Jordan's recordings as a hedge against the recording ban declared by the American Federation of Musicians the same month. The ban, imposed in order to secure royalty payments for union musicians for each record sold, led to Jordan's enforced absence from the studio for the next year, and it also prevented many seminal bebop performers from recording during one of the most crucial years of the genre's history. I'm Gonna Leave You on the Outskirts of Town was an answer record to Jordan's earlier I'm Gonna Move to the Outskirts of Town. It became Jordan's first major chart hit, reaching number 2 on Billboard's Harlem Hit Parade. His next side, What's the Use of Getting Sober When You're Gonna Get Drunk Again, became Jordan's first number 1 hit, reaching the top of the Harlem Hit Parade in December 1942. A subsequent side,
Boy, you ought to listen to your old pappy.
Yes, Pappy.
And stop drinking so much.
Well, I ain't doing so much drinking.
Shut up, boy. You drink all day and you drink all night, and son, you know that ain't right.
Well, Pappy, you just give me a chance. I can.
Shut up, boy.
The Chicks I Pick Are Slender, Tender, and Fine reached number 10 on January 1943. Their next major side, The Comical Call and response number Five Guys Named Mo, was one of the first recordings to solidify the fast-paced, swinging R&B style that became Jordan's signature, and it struck a chord with audiences, reaching number 3 on the race chart in September 1943. The song was later taken as the title of a long-running stage show that paid a tribute to Jordan and his music. The more conventional, That'll Just About Knock Me Out, also fared well, reaching number 8 on the race chart and giving Jordan's 5th hit from December 1942 sessions. In late 1942, Jordan and his band relocated in Los Angeles, working at major venues and in San Diego. While in Los Angeles, Jordan began making soundies, the earliest precursors of modern music videos, and also appeared on many Jubilee radio shows and a series of programs made for the Armed Forces Radio for distribution to American troops overseas. Unlike many musicians, Jordan's career was uninterrupted by the draft, except for a 4-week Army camp tour. Because of a hernia condition, he was classified 4F. Decca was one of the first labels to reach an agreement with the Musicians Union, and Jordan returned to recording in October 1943. At this session, Jordan and his band recorded Ration Blues, which dated from their Foxhead Tavern days, but had a new timeliness with the imposition of wartime rationing. It became Jordan's first crossover hit, charting on both the white and black pop charts. It was also a huge hit with the Harlem Hit Parade, where it spent 6 weeks at number 1 and stayed in the top 10 for a remarkable 21 weeks. And it reached number 11 in the general bestsellers chart. Within a year of his breakthrough, the Timpani 5's appearance fee rose from $350 to $2,000 per night, but the breadth of Jordan's success and the size of his combo had larger implications for the music industry. The blues singer, Gatemouth Moore, said he was playing with 5 pieces that ruined the big bands. He could play just as good and just as loud with 5 as 17, and it was cheaper. Jordan's position as the band's lead vocalist was also uncommon and proved influential. The artistic innovations and economic advantages reinforced each year and helped to shift from big band swing to rock and roll. The word rock, originally black slang for coitus, began to be popularly used in its musical sense in the early 1940s. Following Jordan, many other small bands began achieving success, including Joe Liggins and the Honey Drippers and Johnny Moore's Three Blazers, while single acts such as Big Joe Turner, Ivory Joe Hunter, T-Bone Walker, and Wynonie Harris traveled the circuit without bands. In the 1940s, Jordan released dozens of hit songs, including the swinging Saturday Night Fish Fry, one of the earliest, most powerful contenders for the title of first rock and roll recorded.
You don't have to pay the usual admission if you cook or the waiter or the good musician. So if you happen to be just passing by, stopping at the Saturday Night Fish Fry, it was rockin', it was rockin'. You never seen such coming and shall never break of dawn. It was rockin', yes, it was rockin'. You never seen such coming and shall never break of dawn. Now my buddy and me.
Blue Light Boogie, a comic classic, Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens, Buzz Me, Ain't That Just Like a Woman, They'll Do It Every Time, and the multi-million seller Choo Choo Boogie. One of his biggest hits was Caledonia, with his energetic screaming punchline banged out by the whole band, Caledonia, Caledonia, what makes your big head so hard?
She long, lean, and lank, and they had nothing to eat, but she's my baby, and I love her just the same. Crazy about that woman, 'cause Caledonia is her name. Caledonia, Caledonia, what makes your big head so hard? I love you just the same. I'll always love you, baby, 'cause Caledonia is your name.
After Jordan's success with it, the song was also recorded by Woody Herman in a famous modern arrangement, including a unison chorus by 5 trumpets. Muddy Waters also recorded a version. However, many of Jordan's biggest R&B hits were inimitable, and no hit cover versions of them were recorded. A rarity in the era when black pop music was often recorded by white artists, and many popular songs were released in multiple competing versions. Jordan's raucous recordings were also notable for their fantastical narrative. This is perhaps best exemplified on the freewheeling party adventure Saturday Night Fish Fry, a 2-part 1950 hit that was split across both sides of a 78 RPM record. It is arguably one of the earliest American recordings to include all basic elements of classic rock and roll, obviously exerting a direct influence from the subsequent work of Bill Haley, and it is certainly one of the first widely popular songs to use the word rocking in the chorus and prominently feature a distorted electric guitar. Its distinctive comical adventure narrative is strikingly similar to the style later used by Bob Dylan in his story songs, such as Bob Dylan's 115th Dream and Tombstone Blues. Saturday Night Fish Fry, is also notable for the fact that it dispenses with a customary instrumental chorus introduction, but its most prominent feature is Jordan's rapid-fire, semi-spoken vocal. His delivery, clearly influenced by his experience as a saxophone soloist, de-emphasizes the vocal melody in favor of highly syncopated phrasing and the precursive effects of alteration and assonance, and it is arguably one of the earliest examples in American popular music of vocal stylings that eventually evolved into rap. Jordan's original songs joyfully celebrated the ups and downs of African-American urban life, and were influenced with cheeky good humor and driving musical energy, but that had a massive influence on the development of rock and roll. His music was popular with both blacks and whites, but lyrically most of his songs were empathetically and uncompromisingly black in their content and delivery. Loaded with wry social commentary and coded references, they are also a treasury of the 1930s and 1940s black hipster slang. Through his records, Jordan was probably one of the main popularizers of the slang term chick, woman. Sexual themes were often prominently featured, and notably the saucy, "show me how to milk the cow," that it seems remarkable that they were issued at all. The prime of Jordan's recording career, 1942 through 1950, was a period of segregation on the radio. Despite this, he had a crossover #1 single, G.I. Jive, back with Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby in 1944, thanks in large part to its performance with the orchestra of the song in an all-star wartime musical film, Follow the Boys, Universal Pictures, 1944. 2 years later, MGM's cartoon cat Tom sang Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby in 1946 Tom and Jerry cartoon short called The Solid Serenade.
I got a gal always late. Anytime we have a date, but I love her. I'm gonna ask her, is you is or is you ain't my baby? The way you acting lately makes me down. You is still my baby, baby. See my flame in your heart's done gone out.
Jordan appeared in the 1946 Monogram Pictures movie Swing Parade of 1946 and starred in the 1947 all-black full-length Astor Pictures film Reet Petite and Gone. During this period, Jordan again placed more than a dozen songs on the national charts. However, Louis Jordan and his Timpani 5 dominated the 1940s R&B charts, or as they were known at the time, the race charts. In this period, Jordan had 18 #1 singles and 54 in the top 10. According to Joe Whitburn's point-based analysis of Billboard chart placings, Jordan ranks 5th among the most successful artists over the period 1942 through 1995. From July 1946 through May 1947, Jordan had 5 consecutive #1 songs, holding the top slot for 44 consecutive weeks. Jordan's popularity was boosted not only by his hit Decca records, but also by his prolific recordings for the Armed Forces Radio and the V-Disc transcription program, which helped to make him as popular with whites and blacks. He also starred in a series of short musical films and made numerous soundies for his hit songs. The ancestor of the modern music video, soundies were short film clips designed for use in audio-visual jukeboxes. These were in addition to his part in Follow the Boys. In 1951, Jordan assembled a short-lived big band that included Pee Wee Moore and others. At this time when big bands were declining in popularity, this is considered the beginning of his commercial decline, even though he reverted to the Timpani 5 format within a year. By the mid-1950s, Jordan's records were not selling as well as before, and he left Decca Records. In 1952, Jordan performed for the famed 8 Cavalcade of Jazz concert held at Wrigley Field in Los Angeles, which was produced by Leon Heflin Sr. on June 1st. Also featured that day were Roy Brown and his Mighty Men, Anna Mae Winburn and her Sweethearts, Tony Harper, Jerry Wallace, Jimmy Witherspoon, and Josephine Baker. Jordan and his Timpani 5 came back to play for the 10th Cavalcade Jazz Concert of June 20th, 1954. Count Basie and his orchestra, the Flares, Christine Kittrell, the Lamplighters, Ruth Brown, Perez Prado, and his orchestra were all in the same program. The next label to sign Jordan was Aladdin Records, for which Jordan recorded 21 songs in early 1954. 9 singles were released from these sessions. 3 of the songs were not released. In 1955, Jordan recorded with RCA's independent subsidiary X Records, which changed its name to Vic Records while Jordan was with them. 3 singles were released under the X imprint and 1 under the Vic imprint. 4 tracks were not released. In these sessions, Jordan intensified his sound to compete with rock and roll. In 1956, Mercury Records signed Jordan and released 2 LPs and a handful of singles. Jordan's first LP for Mercury, Somebody Up There Digs Me, 1956, showcased updated rock and roll versions of the previous hits such as Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens, Caledonia, Choo Choo Boogie, Salt Pork West Virginia, and Beware. Its follow-up, Man We're Wailin', 1957, featured a more laid-back, late-night sound. Mercury intended this to be a comeback for Jordan, but it was not commercially successful, and the label let him go in 1958. He recorded sporadically in the 1960s for Warwick, 1960, Black Lion, 1962, Tangerine, 1962 through 1965, and Pizzazz, 1968. In the early 1970s for Black and Blue, 1973, Blue Spectrum, 1973, and JSP, 1974. In 1962, he appeared on the album Louis Jordan Sings by the British trumpeter and bandleader Chris Barber. Speaking in 2012, Barber recalled seeing Jordan in the early 1960s at the Apollo Theater in New York with the intention of bringing him to the UK to record there for his first time. Playing with him was just frightening. It's a bit like an amateur guitar player from a back street who just bought a Spanish guitar, working with Segovia. He didn't make you feel small, but he was just so perfect in what he did. I still remember watching him singing, but he would accompany himself with the alto, and you were convinced he was playing the alto while he was singing. The breath hadn't gone from his last word before he was playing his alto, and it seemed to be simultaneous. He got a very raw deal from the industry. In the Chick Webb band, there were two regular singers, Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Jordan. And really, history hasn't consigned him to just being a comedy vocal thing with a bit of rock and roll and the first alto, but he was such a consummately good singer that he wasn't known more for it. During an interview later in his life, Jordan remarked that rock and roll was simply rhythm and blues played by white performers. The link between Jordan's music and rock and roll was later underscored by others, notably Chuck Berry, who acknowledged on The Tonight Show in 1987 that Jordan was his main inspiration. This led Jordan's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Jordan wrote, or co-wrote, a large proportion of the songs he performed, but did not benefit financially from many of them. Many of the hit songs he wrote, including Caledonia, were credited to his wife, Fleecy Moore, as a means of avoiding an existing publishing agreement. Their marriage was short-lived. On 2 occasions, Moore stabbed Jordan after domestic disputes, almost killing him the second time. After their divorce, she retained ownership of the songs. However, Jordan may have taken credit for some of the songs written by others. He is credited as a co-writer of Saturday Night Fish Fry, but the Tenpenny Five pianist Bill Doggett later claimed that in fact he had written the song. In addition to singing in many films and appearing in mainstream films such as Meet Miss Bobby Sox 1944 and Follow the Boys 1944, Jordan starred in several race films, Beware 1946, Reet, Petite and Gone 1947, and Lookout Sister 1947. His prolific use of film as a promotional vehicle broke new ground, garnering admiration from the trade press, including Billboard, which gushed. The movies have helped the one-nighters, which have also been helped by recordings, which have also helped with the movies, which in turn have become more profitable. It's a delicious circle, and the other bands are now exploring the possibilities. Jordan was married 5 times. His first wife was named Julia or Julie. By 1932, he was married to Ida Fields, a Texas singer and dancer. He and Fields divorced in 1942, and he married his childhood sweetheart, Fleecy Moore. They were later divorced. He married Vicky Hayes, a dancer, in 1951. They separated in 1960. He married Martha Weaver, a singer and dancer, in 1966. Jordan died of a heart attack on February 4th, 1975 in Los Angeles. He is buried at Mount Olive Cemetery in St. Louis, Missouri, the hometown of his wife Martha. Now that is one fine story if I've ever heard one. Seriously, I really hope whoever chooses the music at Bethesda gets to add more Louis Jordan to our Wasteland playlist. There's tons to choose from, and he's just one awesome cat to listen to. Again, the best game I recommend to hear his music in would be Mafia 2. It's not only a personal favorite of mine, but you also get to immerse yourself into the 1940s and 50s while doing so. Speaking of which, you can hear Mr. Jordan in music like his on the totally free Fallout-based A-Bomb radio app. Get it today wherever you get your apps. That's it for me, and until next time, I'm Atomic Wolf, and I thank you for watching.
Here's a tune that I recorded about 35 years ago. I kind of like chickens. I recorded a lot of tunes about chickens, and I'm sure that you know I love chicken. That leg, I just lay on that. The name of this tune is Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens.